What's up, everybody? You're watching JoeBox TV, and we're here to discuss the 2018 JoeKnowsBoxing.com Year-End Awards. You can click the link in the description down below to see my full blog post on it, where I break down each category. So you definitely want to check that out. Now, for this video, I'm going to be discussing why I chose who I chose for each category. Now let's get started with Fighter of the Year. For Fighter of the Year 2018, I chose Oleksandr Usyk, as did most for their Fighter of the Year. The main reason I chose Usyk, for one, is that he's the only current undisputed champion in boxing, having collected the WBC, WBO, WBA, and IBF titles at cruiserweight. He started out the year with a close competitive decision against Maris Briedis in the semifinals of the World Boxing Super Series. Then, in the summer, he won the tournament, defeating the number 2 contender, Murat Gassiev. Gassiev held 2 titles himself, but Usyk put on a clinic and wound up winning the tournament, the Ali Trophy, and the World Boxing Super Series Cruiserweight Tournament, to solidify himself as the only undisputed champion in boxing. And he capped off the year with in a good fight with a knockout victory against Tony Bellew. A gritty challenge, but he got the job done. There were some other good options for Fighter of the Year. However, I don't think Canelo Alvarez's one controversial win over Golovkin and the fight against Rocky Fielding, which didn't really mean a whole lot, as Fielding didn't provide much of a test for Canelo. I'm not sure if that's enough for Canelo to win Fighter of the Year. And because Wilder Fury didn't produce a winner, it wound up in a draw, it's hard to give either of those two Fighter of the Year. But you did have a lot of good breakout fighters who really came through in 2018, and I'll get to that later. Fight of the Year was not an easy choice either. Ring Magazine chose Canelo Golovkin 2, ESPN chose Jarrett Hurd Erislandy Lara, but the two that stood out to me were 2 fights at heavyweight involving Deontay Wilder. That's Deontay Wilder against Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder against Luis Ortiz. After much contemplation, I finally wound up choosing Wilder Ortiz. I was intent on giving it to Wilder Fury because of the drama, and especially the drama that unfolded late in the fight, but I gave Wilder Ortiz another chance, watched it again, and it seems to me that there were more shifts in momentum, more action from beginning to end. So I think that just barely ekes out Wilder Fury for Fight of the Year. I mean, even though Fury outboxed Wilder for a good portion of the fight, he didn't really hurt Wilder like Ortiz did. And that was the main point in my blog post as to why I chose Wilder Ortiz. Both men had their opponent on the verge of collapse. So, your JoeKnowsBoxing.com Fight of the Year, Wilder Ortiz. There wasn't really one standout fight that would be a clear frontrunner for Fighter of the Year. You had Eleider Alvarez stopping Sergey Kovalev. You had Rob Brandt in some ways exposing Ryota Murata. You had Tony Harrison eking out a close decision victory against Jermell Charlo. But the one that really stood out to me was the Emmanuel Navarette-Isaac Dogboe fight. Now, I was higher on Dogboe than most were coming in. He'd absolutely destroyed everyone in his path, including former title holder Jesse Magdaleno when he took the title from Magdaleno, but Navarette was able to use his height advantage in a brilliant way and just continued to time Dogboe as he came in quite recklessly at times. I figured the body attack from Dogboe would wear down Navarette, but it didn't. Navarette stuck to the game plan, and in the later rounds, Dogboe really began to fade. I was certain coming in that Dogboe would be able to get inside of Navarette's reach and just really beat him down, as Navarette hadn't really faced anyone near Dogboe's level, but Navarette got the job done and took the title. There were a lot of good choices for knockout of the year. My personal favorite in terms of just a real devastating punch was Lemieux's left hook against Gary O'Sullivan. Only thing is, Sullivan came fairly close to being the count. He wasn't out cold or anything, and he got up. To me, it comes down to either Naoya Inouye's knockout over Juan Carlos Payano or Teofimo Lopez, one of the better prospects this year, his knockout over Mason Menard. But I narrowly chose Inouye's knockout over Payano, for one reason being Payano was a stiffer test for Inoue than I thought Menard was for Lopez. Payano is a former world champion, and Inoue just starched him with one big right hand. As did Lopez with Menard, but I thought Inouye's punch looked just a little bit better. My choice for Prospect of the Year is not the most popular choice, because a lot of people aren't too familiar with Joseph Adorno. Now, let me reiterate, there's a lot of good up-and-coming prospects. As I mentioned, Teofimo Lopez. You got British welterweight Josh Kelly. I like Jaron Ennis. I think Devin Haney is a force to be reckoned with. The only reason I didn't choose Ryan Garcia is because I actually have him ranked number 10 at junior lightweight. He had a win against Jason Velez and some other guys that were former contenders. I think he has beaten enough of those guys to sneak into the 10 spot, which moves him past prospect status. And also, most people gave Ryan Garcia Prospect of the Year last year. So, as for my pick, Joseph Adorno. He's 11-0 with 10 knockouts. Fighting out of Allentown, PA. He grew up in Puerto Rico and is now trained by Robert Garcia. I think he may be the most devastating puncher of any of these prospects. His left hook in particular has produced some highlight reel knockouts. He's truly a force to be reckoned with, and what impresses me is the poise, the focus, and the patience. Which, as I mentioned in my blog post, you don't usually see that in a young prospect. Not to the degree that Adorno shows. And I've also had the opportunity to watch him grow as an amateur, as I fought in the Pennsylvania Golden Gloves. He was one weight class below me, but I watched most of his fights as an amateur. Not most, but a decent amount of his fights as an amateur. And knocking people out is nothing new to him. He's been doing it since the amateurs. He's been producing some highlight reel knockouts since the amateurs. And when he attacks, the combination punching is lethal. So, I look forward to seeing how my pick stacks up against the others, particularly as time goes on. Time will tell how quickly Adorno progresses as opposed to some of the other prospects. Now for Best Performance of the Year. There's some good ones to choose from, but contrary to what most are going to be expecting, I'm actually going with Vasyl Lomachenko's victory over Jorge Linares. Now, I know what you may be thinking. He got knocked down by a straight right hand. First time in his career that Lomachenko's been knocked down. But I thought his ability to come up off the canvas and keep dominating as he was in the middle rounds and eventually stop Linares showed mental toughness and a will to win. And in particular, I thought the angles, the pivots that you usually see every time Lomachenko's in the ring, it was on display. He was truly on his A-plus game. Outside of that one moment where he got knocked down, and a few other moments where Linares opened up and landed some good combinations, Lomachenko was in control, picking apart Linares throughout the fight. This goes under the radar, but Linares has some of the fastest hands in boxing. Lomachenko was able to neutralize him, and he also had a slight height disadvantage. Lomachenko was able to gradually slip inside Linares' shots, counter precisely with rapid-fire combinations. I mean, he showed everything. And the knockout at the end with the body shot was also a highlight reel knockout. Other performances, I liked Terence Crawford, his performance against Jeff Horn, who had won a close, controversial decision over Manny Pacquiao. Crawford absolutely outclassed Horn and stopped him in the later rounds. I liked Usyk's performance against Murat Gaziev. I liked Gvozdik's performance against Adonis Stevenson. And by the way, great to hear that Adonis Stevenson is out of his coma. We send our prayers in regards to Stevenson's condition and hope that his condition continues to progress. So good to hear that he's out and is doing better now. But as for Oleksandr Gvozdik, I thought it was a good win against Adonis Stevenson. I thought he looked very good in that fight. And I thought Callum Smith had an excellent performance against George Groves. I thought Manny Pacquiao looked excellent in his last fight when he took the title from Lucas Matisse. Now let's talk about the breakout fighter of the year. The guy that either came out of nowhere or a guy that was just flying under the radar and did major things in the year. And I'm going with Josh Warrington. Coming in, some thought he was at the bottom half of the top 10 at featherweight, but he took the featherweight division by storm and just won a close decision over Lee Selby when he took Lee Selby's IBF title. And then he beat Carl Frampton in the greatest performance of his career thus far. Frampton, let's not forget, Frampton beat Santa Cruz. He beat Leo Santa Cruz in their first fight before falling to Leo Santa Cruz in their second. Warrington was mostly just an up-and-coming prospect coming into the year, and now he's a world champion with one defense against an elite fighter in Carl Frampton. So, Josh Warrington, your breakout fighter of the year. Other good ones who came out of nowhere, I thought Maurice Hooker deserves to be mentioned for taking the title from Terry Flanagan in a very close, good competitive fight. And I also think Gvozdik deserves mention for breakout fighter of the year. Now, round of the year. To me, it's not even close. It has to be Wilder Fury round 12. I mean, everyone was thinking the same thing when Wilder landed that devastating right-hand bomb. His signature right-hand bomb followed by the left hook. Fury fell to the canvas hard, looked like he was unconscious, and then somehow managed to get up. Everyone was thinking the same thing. How did he get up? I've never seen anything like it. It was one of the most stunning moments in recent memory that I've seen as a boxing observer. Not only did Fury beat the count, but he also fought back and landed some excellent shots on Wilder in the same round. And given the magnitude of the fight, given that Fury was comfortably ahead, or should have been comfortably ahead on the scorecards heading into round 12, then got dropped like it was going to be the end. No one moment in 2018 matches that level of drama. So, Wilder Fury round 12, round of the year. I do think Alex Saucedo against Lenny Zapovigna, round 4, deserves some mention. That wasn't too far behind, but I definitely think Wilder Fury round 12 deserves the nod here. Comeback of the year. This is a relatively easy choice. I think, considering what Tyson Fury overcame after the Klitschko victory in November 2015, he said to himself, what's next? And again, make sure to check my blog post down below where I cover kind of the story of Fury's life in those dark years. He began a life of partying and alcohol and drugs, suffering from addiction and crippled by depression. It was really some dark moments from Tyson Fury that he was able to get through, and he stated that after asking the Lord for help that he felt more secure and he felt hope again, and he began to turn his life around. And he slowly started to get back in shape. He got up to 400 pounds after all he had been through, and eventually worked his way back to 250, 260. Had 2 tune-up fights in 2018. One against Sefer Seferi, which quite honestly didn't prove anything. And then one against a journeyman in Francesco Payano. A decision win, which still didn't answer a whole lot of questions. I definitely wasn't confident that he could still hang with the elite heavyweights after his performance against Payano. But nevertheless, Wilder Fury was settled. They came to a deal for December 1st, and even though I was picking Wilder to win by knockout, and that almost happened, Fury was able to control the vast portion of the fight with just tremendous upper body movement, defense, made Wilder miss continuously, and just gave him fits, picked him apart. And it was really astonishing to see a heavyweight that big and that light on his feet. And you could really see the ring IQ of Fury on display. And even after all he had been through, he looked even better than he did against Vladimir Klitschko. That's what's so astonishing about it. And as I mentioned in the blog post, him getting knocked down and then coming back up after that knockdown is symbolic of his life, because he got up in life and he got up in the ring. So, Tyson Fury, 2018 Comeback of the Year. Female Fighter of the Year. This was not an easy choice, but I gave it to Claressa Shields because I thought she accomplished a little bit more than Katie Taylor. As of now, Cecilia Brækhus is probably the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in women's boxing right now. But I think Shields and Taylor both accomplished a little bit more this year. And I give the edge to Shields because I think her victories this year were a bit more significant. Not only did Claressa Shields go 4-0 this year, she picked up 3 titles. She started out the year with a victory against a very good fighter in Tori Nelson. Then, in the summer, she faced Hannah Gabriels in her toughest fight to date. She got up off the canvas and outboxed Hannah Gabriels throughout most of the fight to come away with a decision victory and 2 world titles as she moved down to middleweight. Then she defended it later in the year, defended both of those titles, and picked up the WBC title against Hannah Rankin. And finally she closed out the year by beating Femke Hermans. Although Shields isn't a big puncher, she's a terrific combination puncher. And when she opens up, she can create some fun fights. And I think probably the greatest performance of her career was against Hannah Gabriels. Finally, for Trainer of the Year, I chose Anatoly Lomachenko. Just imagine having 2 of the best 5 fighters in the world training with you. Training 2 of the best fighters in the world. And that's what Anatoly Lomachenko is doing. For one, his son, Vasyl Lomachenko, who most, including myself, would regard as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Anatoly first introduced his son Vasyl to boxing when he was 4 years old. And ever since then, he's done everything to help him get to the top. As I mentioned in the blog post, one example was he took him to dancing lessons, made him take dancing lessons for coordination, for foot movement. And in addition, he has a very unconventional training method that he puts his fighters through, and very unique exercises that you don't see anywhere else. And it's really something to watch, and I suggest you check it out. Not only has he helped Vasyl Lomachenko become a 2-time gold medalist and now arguably the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, he's turned Usyk into basically a cruiserweight version of Lomachenko. And as previously mentioned, Usyk wins Fighter of the Year for 2018. So it really has been a great year for Anatoly and his crew. Anatoly Lomachenko, your Trainer of the Year for 2018. Finally, let's talk about the biggest story of 2018. There were a lot of different stories that you could choose from here. Some big fights, big developments in the sport of boxing, but I chose HBO leaving the sport of boxing after 45 years, and now we simultaneously begin to see premier boxing champions, DAZN and ESPN begin to take over the sport of boxing. Mobile apps are becoming a trend in the sport of boxing, particularly with the DAZN app. Canelo Alvarez signing a 10-fight, $365 million deal, record-breaking deal with DAZN, was one of the bigger stories of the year. So we certainly experienced a tremendous shift in boxing as far as the networks go this year. I'm thankful that I was able to experience some of the many great fights on HBO during my lifetime. So many phenomenal fights, so many boxing legends, legendary trainers, and expert commentary from fighters, trainers, and analysts really covered boxing the way it should be covered. And it goes way back to the fight between George Foreman and Joe Frazier when HBO broadcasted its first boxing match. I'm very thankful to have witnessed it, and it is sad to see HBO boxing leave, although, as I stated in my blog post, the future of boxing is in great hands with the up-and-coming networks that are taking over. So, that'll wrap it up. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of the choices, what other choices you would make, because I'm sure there's plenty that you guys are going to disagree with. And so let's debate in the comments below. telling what you thought. Until next time, JoeBox TV,